where there's a deputy judge who sits for 1 day, once a month maximum, who does not know what SABS stands for.
They know what BS stands for.
They know what BS stands for. So for the experts in the room who will be called into the small claims court to give evidence, you'll have like 20 minutes to do what at FISCO or in a normal trial you would really do over the course of several hours. And the subject matter knowledge and frankly the adjudicative experience and skill of the deputy judge will be very different from what you would encounter.
I can just add one thing to what Kadey just said. By the way, Renee, you're never going to get another question in. We're just going to keep going. There's another case that was released on Friday, so that makes it 2 judges on 4 cases plus 1 fiscal arbitrator all saying the same thing, and they're all subject to being appealed now. And I suspect that FISCO is going to try to change the law in the interim.
Okay, I may not get a question in, but we have a lady up at the top there who has a question.
As a case manager, I'd like to get some more guidance from you guys on how to address accessing attendant care funding. For those of us who've worked with Wanda, we know that she is unique in the industry, and what I'm experiencing is adjusters who are digging in their heels and looking for every possible way to say no. I have 2 bona fides, very profoundly serious CAP files. One's a spinal cord, one's a brain injury, who's so severely impaired he's institutionalized, and I've got adjusters who are saying no on one because the spinal cord injuries parents have not sustained incurred economic loss because they're taking turns staying in his apartment overnight and they're getting up in the morning and going to work. And the other one where the adjuster is only paying, she's redefined the Form 1, she's only paying the comfort and care portion that has been assigned to the family. She's taking co-payment off the top of that and wants the agency who's going in to provide the care to do it at $10.25 an hour. Any guidance from any of you about how we go about dealing, because this is, and everyone that's coming back, I'm finding they're getting more and more adversarial, and we're not talking about WAD cases where the families were getting $3,000 and using them to go on holidays.
There's a reason, not to be too silly about this, but there is a reason why we have a FISCO system and why we have a court system, and that is to provide the opportunity to beat the crap out of the insurers that are acting this way. And
Jim, could you speak up?
Without choosing not to.
Without good lawyers, I am very sad for these people. And not to think too far out of the box, but I've had the discussion with a number of people in this audience on a number of occasions about, well, I have this case, as you would describe, and they're not getting anywhere, and they're not getting any help, and the insurance company won't behave responsibly, it seems, and what do we do? And I always, for me, it's a fairly easy question to go back to, well, who's looking after them? And I appreciate you're probably doing everything you can to help, but the better question in my mind always is, who's the lawyer, who's the legal representative, and what buttons are they pushing?
Well, one of them is going to mediation, the one who's institutionalized, and realistically speaking, the client will be dead by the time we get him the care that he needs.
Yeah, well, that just means the system's failed when that happens. To my mind, that just means our system didn't work.
One of the things to keep in mind, though, is the changes were made to the SABs for a reason, and whether we like it or not, and I think a lot of us don't like it, the incurred issue was designed to take away, potentially, payment for the parents under the circumstances that you described. That doesn't mean you can't get it in tort, and it doesn't mean that there aren't creative ways to get an insurer to pay it. So, for example, what I've said to insurers under those circumstances is, look, this person is so severely compromised, doesn't it make more sense for the parents to care for them than for some stranger? No, I want to pay incurred. Fine, I'll tell you what. We'll get someone in. It'll be someone in this room. We'll hire them to come sleep overnight. We'll collect our $6,000 a month, and then I'm going to write to your supervisor, and what I'm going to say is, do you want to keep paying this provider $6,000 a month, Or how about a deal where you pay my client's parents $5,000 a month? Which makes sense? And let's try and deal with this practically. And many adjusters will, and supervisors will see the light, and some will say, no, we'd rather pay a private provider $6,000 a month than negotiate with you to pay someone that technically might not be required to be paid under the SABS. But the reality is the SABS is a contract of insurance that only gives certain things. And if it doesn't give it, then the insurer's not going to pay it unless you give them a reason to.
One of the problems that exists today, and I'm not an apologist for the insurance industry, although or for my own behavior, yeah. I will say that insurers have rallied hard for the changes that were made. And the system is broken, there's no doubt about that. And one of the biggest failings of the system is we are now, 16 months post-change, and don't have a single solitary clue as to what any of these changes mean in terms of having been judicially or considered or decided by an arbitrator or on appeal. And that is exceedingly unusual because we've had changes many times before since 1990, and within a few months we have some cases to guide us. And no insurer wants to be the one who erodes this new great definition. And no insurer wants to give away what they've fought hard to gain in terms of changes. And I don't think that the system is working well where we don't have any answers today when we should have had them 6 or 8 months ago to guide insurers as to how to make these decisions. I will also see in response to Jim that I'm not here to give you arguments to make against insurers, but pen poised. But if you're dealing with a child with a long life expectancy and that $1 million limits will erode, the erosion of those limits where you're paying professional caregivers as opposed to non-professional caregivers at a lower rate may be something to argue against that. Argue with that insurer about.
Did you have any further questions? Okay, but I just wanted to give Carrie and Wanda, who are actually dealing with this immediately in their areas of work, to weigh in on this.
It is overly frustrating. I wish we could all have adjusters on files like Wanda that are going to go through the criteria and approve whatever the Form 1 is suggesting the care level is. We have been attempting, and I can't say it's successful, but we've approached the different nursing facilities, so Bayshore, We Care, I don't want to leave anybody out, so whoever's out there. And they do have 3 or 4 day courses. Plus, if it's serious, and they're not paying based on economic loss, is the certificates that you'd get for the parents, all the training that they have to participate in and be cleared through Blue Review or Sick Kids. Somehow getting something documented, and it is all there. They have to pass and qualify and be certified. Yeah, so I know it's difficult, and unfortunately these parents and families are being really, really left with nothing while the system tries to figure itself out.
Well, my topic was on attendant care and economic loss this morning, and I think I went through what the issues are, and again, like I said this morning, I only can speak for myself. I'm only accountable to myself, and believe me, that's a hard enough job. But
I agree.
He's been my counsel at times. Once he comes on, yeah. But on my files, every file I have, I am paying attendant care in accordance with the Form 1. If I agree with it, I don't always agree with the Form 1 I get, but there's means and ways of addressing that. But if I agree with it, every file I personally have, I'm paying attendant care. We found ways, like I said, working with council to substantiate that. I guess it depends, like I said, how the adjuster views economic loss. I personally don't view it has to be a wage loss. I don't feel that's the narrow interpretation of economic loss. I look at it like I said, in a broader perspective. I feel a stay-at-home mom, if she has extra incurred costs, like she normally looked after the family, like I said, now she has to bring in a babysitter or somebody to help care for those kids while she's looking after her spinal cord child and she pays them. I feel that is an economic loss. If she has to have someone clean the house where she normally cleaned it because she's caring for her injured child. That's an Well, yeah, my interpretation of the SABs is once they meet all the criteria to qualify for attendant care, I feel we are based on the Form 1, not what that individual's actual loss or incurred expense is. But like we said, there's no cases out there to define it, but that's how I'm paying my files.
Why are they not being pushed through the case?
Well, we wish.
Adam,
One of the points that Jim made earlier about treatment provision is equally appropriate in the attendant care side of things, which is, you know, if you've got a provider who will provide the care for $15 an hour, but is only getting paid, you know, $8 an hour under the SABs, if they're willing to wait until the tort case is processed to get paid the balance of those funds, and it can be a friend, a colleague, it can be a professional, but that's another, you know, it's not all that creative, but another way that people should consider to get the care, get the person paid the amount of money they should at the end, pay them a reasonable sum of interest on the amount that's outstanding for a period of time. The client gets the care, the person gets paid eventually, the insurer pays what they're supposed to pay, and you know, everyone gets what they need to get, as opposed to just saying, well, you know, if they're not going to pay me $22 an hour, I'm not providing the care. That's a bit black and white for this type of situation and this type of system.
I see we've got someone up at the top who would like to ask a question.
But before she does, just one quick point. Carrie just asked the question, why hasn't Fisco moved things through to get a decision made? In your introduction of me, Renee, you said that I've made submissions to the government. One of the submissions I made about 10 months ago was the Director of Arbitrations has the ability to state a case to the Divisional Court. Divisional Court would be next below the Court of Appeal in terms of authority in the province, and get any of these cases interpreted. And I suggested to them, go, state a case on what is an incurred expense. Go, state a case as to what a MIG is. And the superintendent of insurance turned to his right hand and said, can we do that? And they said, yeah, we can. Oh, have they done it? No.
Okay. Eric, you know what, I think also, speaking about attendant care as an insurer, is something else that concerns me, that's going back to this Claire book I have, SABs. It's section 3.8, and I'm not quite sure how insurers are interpreting it, but when I first read that, it gives me some concern. And it basically, like all the lawyers will know what it says, but it basically says when there's a dispute that the trier of fact, if the insurer is not covering it, they have the authority to make a decision. My experience is, if it's a serious injury or catastrophic, I'm quite confident what decision they're going to make.
Okay, so let's get to the question at the top here.
It also pertains to the attendant care.
Could you speak a little louder?
It also pertains to attendant care. And Wanda, I'm just wondering, Wanda, if you have any suggestions, it's twofold. One, we have insurers who aren't disputing the Form 1, but because there's no economic loss, won't even entertain a wider interpretation as you have. What reports, what documents, what avenues would we have as service providers to make our case that there is a broader interpretation short of quoting you in a report to suggest that?
Well, I guess, again, it goes back to, as treatment providers, what you've always done. I guess it's just documenting it, reporting it, but there's only so much as a treatment provider you can do. I think it goes back to their legal representative, is where, like, it's frankly, like I said this morning, all the cases I've had, the first phone call I made, which I did yesterday, I have a new case, was to the legal rep. Okay, we have care, how are we going to address it? and help me. And they've all helped me. Like, we discuss it, we discuss economic loss, what's their client's situation.